she brought fish to throw at people that disagreed with her,
Like actual fish?
like stuffed fish.
Okay, thank God.
And yeah, it was stuffed
It's not like a
fish.
cooler
And
of like
she's
fish.
like,
It's just
I won't argue with you. I'll just throw these fish at you. That was it.
that's great.
So
Great.
let's talk about panels.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about for panels?
I want to talk about how panels are the best possible thing you can worm your way into. Um, because I know you've done more panels than I have, but I've done a handful as well. And if you can finagle a way to get yourself on a panel at a Comic Con, do it. Absolutely do it. Would you agree?
I think so. Yeah, they are. I am, we've talked before about how you are very extroverted and very, I think,
Yeah.
gregarious, and you were working your way through the thesaurus just last week.
Yeah.
I am all of not those things. I am the complete opposite of that. I am an introvert. I do not like, in your daily role as a professor, you're up in front of the class, you're speaking a lot. I'm not comfortable doing that. But even that being said, yes, if you can get on a panel, it is at a bigger show, it is definitely the best way to get seen and bring people. They will come find you at your booth.
Yeah. And here's why I love panels. So I am the kind of person who like I will give a whole presentation in front of a bunch of folks. Like yeah, as you said, I'm a professor, like that's kind of I thrive on that a little bit. But the problem for me with that sort of setup is you have to prepare for it. And it takes a lot of work and you've got to like make slides and you have to know what you're going to say and you have to kind of, be like prepped. Um, Panels are the most low stress things I've ever done in my life because for a panel, you show up, someone else asks you a question that you almost certainly know the answer to. And if you
Oh,
don't know
not
the answer,
always.
yeah, but if you don't know the answer to it, part two, I guess it could be a little tricky, and I hope you have a story to follow up with that. But in my experience, if you don't know the answer, you can just say, I don't know, and then make some sort of joke. And then that's maybe even better than you actually answering it in terms of the people who are, experiencing it.
That is a great segue because that's exactly, especially you and I, we write humorous stuff, so that is an opportunity for us. I think actually humor will endear you to just about anybody, but I have found myself on panels where I've questioned how I ended up on those panels.
You've ended up
And
on some pretty intense panels.
yeah, there've been some strange ones, but they've almost always been fun. And some of the most fun have been the ones where and I think, that's, I don't mind presenting if I'm prepared, um, but you can't prepare for these things. Now, ideally, you should have knowledge of the situation. You will be placed on panels generally that are um, in line with what you write, in line with what you do, but sometimes they just need bodies for panels. And a lot of times, or something, you'll be stuck on something which may seem closely associated to what you do and it's really not, and you're out of your element, but you do have an opportunity there to really stand out and make an impact. Generally, my approach is to try and make a joke about it, and I can often play on my own ignorance, which is very handy and very convenient um, when you're in those situations. But yeah, there's been a few where I was stuck on a panel. I felt out of my depths, but I was able to turn it around into something that, a fun performance. One thing, the first time I was on a panel, the first Comic Con I really did was Dragon Con. I got invited.
You went all
One
the way
of
to
my
the top.
readers. Yeah, it was kind of. I hadn't been to a Comic Con of any kind since college. It had been about 20 years, and then out of the blue, I kind of got invited to Dragon Con. And I went and we did as soon as we were going, we did a couple local ones when we could, but then the pandemic shut everything down. So we had an idea of what we were getting into. But as far as panels go, the very first panel I was ever on was with several authors I had read growing up. And I'd never done a panel. I was
That is
interviewed.
intimidating.
It was it was pretty
That's
crazy. Like, yeah, I'm like, oh, you saved Star Wars, and here you are next to me. And of course, somehow drew the chair right next to the guy. And I have not been on a panel. There's been very few a-holes on panels, and these people were. I lucked out, and I ran into that guy at the bar the night before, and said, "Hey, I'm freaking out. I'm on a panel for the first time. You're there," and he was very very kind and was like, no, we'll take it easy on you.
Nice.
Uh, so that worked out. But I ran into another author I knew, and I'm like, he's like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm a little freaking out. Hey, you're on a panel with other authors. If you show any kind of personality at all, they'll love you. And we're all weird. Like we may be introverted, we may be extroverted, but I think authors are generally very, very weird. So it's
We all
awkward for a
spend
lot
way
of
too
us.
much time in our own heads. Like
We do, and
that's how
all of
you
a
become a
sudden,
writer.
and then they put us in front of people. This is not this is very sudden for all of us. So if you're on a panel with, it's generally 4 to 5 people and the moderator.
Hmm.
I find a lot of, everyone's probably freaking out the way you are, or they're definitely concerned about selling their books and, being memorable to the audience, like, hey, here's what I wrote, here's how smart I am, go buy my book about this topic. If you just keep in mind, I find my purpose there is not to necessarily even be remembered or sell my books, it is to make sure they're having fun. So that's why I would go to a panel at a show. And if I go there, I've been on some pretty dull ones, and I'm like, oh man, this is murder. And I hate to be a part of this waste of their half hour or hour where they could have done so many other things.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing to me is be entertaining. I go for the laugh if I can, but it's a show. You're part of the show, which is what makes this so great. But it is definitely entertainment.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about situations that, you've been in, I think is, and that I've been in too, is that I certainly have never had the experience, and I'm going to guess probably you've not had the experience either of like, we're not the ones who are like the main draws to the panel.
No.
And so the pressure is really off. You get to be the one to do what you want and bring the color commentary and bring the jokes and bring the humor. Like no one has any expectations about you. They're probably there to see someone else. And that's actually a good thing. And the ones who are
Yes.
there to see you, they know you and they've read your books. And so you're doing them a service also by being fun, by being jovial, by cracking jokes.
I think my nightmare is being the only person on the panel. I think that is like,
The fewer people on the panel, the worse it is, for sure.
it really is. Yeah. So no, you're right. I think usually there's it's never been me that's drawn the audience. It's been somebody else on the panel or it's been the topic itself.
Mhm.
And there's, they do a really good job of putting people on there that are versed in the topic. I think the one I kind of found myself on, I felt the one I felt most out of sorts on was I got stuck on a fan panel for Fallout, the TV show. And I'd watched it once. I love the show. I love the games. I've played the game since the first one. But like they went down the line and I was on the very end and they had to find a chair for me. They didn't know I was coming. I was on the schedule, but like my name's like handwritten. Everyone else has got a plaque and like this is the person that built the suit for the show. Like this is the person that he's been
All
running the
right, that's a
wiki
little
for 10
intimidating. Yeah, that
years.
feels.
The woman next to me is dressed as the Nuka-Cola girl. Like, and I'm like on the end going like, there's not a lot of table. I can go sit in the audience. I don't mind. But I was still able to contribute just in, being as far as choosing a place to sit. Um, if you have the choice, I do like being as far away from the moderator as possible, just because I will have a little time to think. I like being in the middle because they'll kind of some will move from left to right and then right to left, and they'll just kind of sweep up and down the uh, table
Yeah.
calling on people. So I like to be in the middle, so I have a little time to think before it gets to me. And also to hear, like on that one, people would say something. I'd be, well, no one's mentioned this aspect of it yet. I can talk about this part of the show that I enjoyed and at least bring a different perspective to it. Because I had nothing as far as I'd watched the show 1.5 times. I was
Yeah.
halfway through cramming it before this panel, trying to get it in one more time. But yeah, it was that one was a little strange. But at the same time, I was able to bring up things that like I just remember one of the points I made. Everyone was very focused on how it related to the game and all this. And one of the things I really enjoyed about the show that nobody really mentioned was I love for the first time being able to see the past, the retro futuristic past that the universe is set in.
Yeah.
We'd seen glimpses of it in cutscenes, but like, hey, the show's spending a lot of time there, and I thought that was I always loved that aspect of the game was it was this weird what if the 60s were accurate in their predictions of the future? So it was I was still able to contribute even though I had not built any of the set pieces myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of cool because like if you don't know what's going on on the panel, or if you're like the person with the least knowledge, you also in some ways get to be the avatar for the audience. And you
Yes.
know there are people in the audience, like obviously there are super fans who know everything, but you know they have friends that they brought to this. The friends are like, I don't really know much about this thing. And you know there are folks who are like, I have an empty hole in my schedule. I'll go see this panel. I like the game. I don't know. I'll go check it out. And you get to be the one who's like, who they get to relate with the most. And so then you get, if you get the opportunity to kind of to voice your confusion even, or your, your jokes, or your takes on like this small detail that no one else really focuses on because it's not like a major game element or major show element,
Mhm.
you get to be the one to represent all those other people who are not as into it, and that you become the hero in that scenario.
And that's a very good point. I don't know that there's any kind of etiquette against doing this, but there's nothing saying, as far as I know, that you can't ask the person that just spoke, like, hey, that's a really good point. What about, you can kind of start a conversation with that
Yeah.
person too and just leapfrog off what they were doing. So there's ways. It is deer in the headlights for a second, but the best panels and the fun panels, you do kind of just fall into the swing of being up there with a bunch of people generally having a good time.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about it is you might get to meet some really cool people. A lot of
Absolutely.
my I know your story is going to blow mine out of the water, so I'm just going to give mine really quickly and get it out of the way. And I've been on some good book panels with some kind of agents and editors who are a big deal, but they're not public facing. Um, One of my favorite things I've ever done is actually not author related at all, but because my background is in arts management and I did a lot of marketing for theater companies and opera companies in Chicago for a while. I eventually ended up on a panel with Renee Fleming, who I don't know if anyone watching this will even know who that is, but she's a major opera star. Like she is huge. She's a she, it, she's the Bernadette Peters of opera, and as I say that, I realize that's also probably hitting the wrong audience. But she's a huge deal, trust me, in opera, and I know that because I worked at Lyric Opera for a while, and we were on a panel together, and like it was so great to just get to chat with her, like in the green room before, and like we interacted on the panel a lot, and we chatted. She was super nice, and like sometimes you get to meet yeah, your heroes or just people who are just like at the top levels of the game you're playing, and it's so wonderful just to get to chat with those folks. It's really incredible.
It yeah, it's astounding where you find yourself, like I said, the very first panel I was on, there were a couple of big authors on there that I was like, yeah, I read these books growing up, and over the last few years, especially at something the size of Dragon Con, where they have a big writer track, you find yourself on there with some well-known writers, and yeah, it's interesting too. Like I did one show where uh, we were all a group of authors. There was about six of us, five or six of us, and all the panels we were all on together. Like they were writing panels, and it was always the five or six of us that were there, and some very big, very very big name authors, and just for lack of something to say, they would say like, you always do this. I'm like, well, not always. Just I needed content,
Yeah.
sometimes, but I mean, I did have insight to what I was saying, but like you're arguing with a New York Times, you know,
Right.
the editor of, yeah, like this is a big deal, but then afterwards it's like, that's a very good point. I didn't think about it that way. I didn't, because some of the authors you meet too are generally going to be traditionally published, or the bigger ones are traditionally published, and they don't think a lot about the marketing. They don't think about a lot of the mechanics and stuff like that, of even like the length of audiobooks or stuff like, there's all sorts of things you talk about. You do bring a different insight to it, even against somebody that's been traditionally published for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
If you're doing the indie game anyway, you have a very different outlook on it. And I've seen a lot of these big authors start approaching the indie authors that do well, going, I need to start doing this. They're getting their rights back. They're starting their own companies. They're starting their own presses. And they will pull you aside and go, I know you're doing well with this. What can you teach me?
Yeah.
Which is really,
How surreal.
really crazy. Okay, yeah, you're coming to me. So I think when that I have not met anybody of note that was a jerk. Um, Everybody that's, like there have been a few panels I've been on where um the people were kind of jerky for lack of a better term, and you know what? They weren't back the next time. They
Mhm.
they don't get invited back. Don't
Yeah.
don't argue, don't fight, don't make drama. You're there to entertain the crowd. But I've never met an author of note or anyone that was a jerk. They're all really cool, really great, and they're it's a great opportunity to interact with them. It really is, and to meet them and talk to them. They're appreciative. They're always looking to learn something too. I think all writers are naturally curious, so they'll if they see a different perspective, they'll generally go,
Yeah.
"Okay, tell me."
And I think it's fair to say the hands down the worst job on a panel is the moderator. So if you're not the moderator, you're doing great because being a moderator for a panel is the worst job in the world.
I couldn't do it. Yeah, I
I
don't.
couldn't either. It's absolutely not.
That
Can
may
we
be the
talk?
next step, though. Next
Oh
year,
no.
but yeah.
Can we talk a little briefly about how you get on panels? Because I know our experiences are probably a little different. In my experience, it's like I've applied for this panel. I think I would be a good fit. Here are my credentials, and here's why I want to be on this panel. And then and that's just, kind of as part of a show that you're applying to get a table for or whatever.
Yeah.
And they will say yes or no or send some more information. We'll decide. That's been exclusively my experience as a writer on panels. But you've been invited to some panels, correct?
Yeah, it's part of the same kind of thing. Like there's an application process. Like I was invited to go to Dragon Con, but there was still the application process. So when you're putting that together, you talk about here's what I do, here's who I am, here's my books, and here's the topics I can talk about. Here are the tracks I could be involved with. Now, something the size of Dragon Con, they have a track for just about every subgenre or whatever. But it depends on the size of show. Different shows, a lot of shows don't even have writer tracks at all. Fan expos are a big one here. We don't have anything for writers. They were starting to develop something. That person got promoted, and the new person is not interested. So,
Correct.
but at smaller shows, it could be a matter of like, hey, can I have the microphone? I want to do a panel. There's for mid and smaller shows, you can go offer. We should be doing this. Wouldn't it be great if we had this? I can wrangle all the authors at Artist Alley and we could talk about this right now. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I think formally it's the application process and just you fill it out, you talk about how you'd be interested in doing this, here are the topics I can talk about. Now as authors we can talk about more than just writing. We're fans of things as much as anything else, so it's possible to get on, like I say, it was a fan panel for Fallout and it was not necessarily my specialty, but my books do relate, so at the end I can say I write these kind of books.
Well, this is
Fallout
important.
was obviously a huge influence.
Yeah. And to think about too, like when one of the pre-work you can do to make sure you're not on a panel where you don't know what to do or what to say is in the application process, don't overblow your your interests. Like
Mhm.
be real about what you do and what you like and don't try to stretch it just to fit into a panel because that is how you might get into trouble.
Well, yes, absolutely. You can get yourself into trouble, but at the same time, you should know ahead of time. I don't think you're going to get
Yeah.
there and like, oh, surprise, you're on this. They tell you ahead of time. I had one year where there was some changing of the staff at a con, and the new person had gotten into their head that I was a lit RPG author and I ran role playing games, and everything I was on was like Dungeon Master's Guide. I'm
Oh
like,
no.
guys, I have not rolled the dice since junior high. I will not be. I don't. I'm there if you need me. I always say like
Yeah.
I'll do it if you need me, if you need the bodies, but I'm really not the guy for this job. And I rarely want I don't want to big off panels. I want every chance I can get.
Yeah.
We had one panel at one show. This is the same one where it was all the authors. There were the five or six of us that were in each. Every time we did a panel, it was the same people on the panel, and there was one one panel was it was about selling your books or some marketing your books or something like that, and like eight people showed up to the panel to see it. And that's, I mean, depending on the size of the show, that's good or bad. This was a huge show, and it was based on who was on the panel. That wasn't me. It was kind of surprising. It was only 8 people, but we still gave them a hell of a show, and we
Yeah.
talked about all the things. We answered questions, and every one of those 8 people came by and bought a book from me.
I say sometimes those small groups are actually the best because they will do what you said, but they'll come by and they feel a
Yeah,
personal connection because there were only a few folks, and they will ask questions in the room, and it will feel like they're doing a one-on-one, like almost like they bought a VIP pass to this
exactly.
exclusive conversation with these authors, which,
Yeah.
and you
So
can
even the
foster
ones
that
that,
by being excited about being there with them and not treating them differently because there's only 8 of them.
yeah, I've been on a few panels where people are complaining about whatever, and it's like it's not worth it, And a lot of times it's like I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like, I had a panel at this last show I was at that was for dystopian authors, and there were 5 of us up there, and not one of us wrote a dystopian book. And we were all like, we wrote post-apocalyptic. We wrote, and if you think about it though, and I think that's what I'm saying. Like some people go like, well, dystopia and apocalypse are the same thing. They're really not. They're very, very different. But within the post-apocalyptic genre, you're going to have warlords and dystopian kind of
Or you can talk
sibling.
about societal breakdown and kind of
So it
control and
parallels.
yeah.
Yeah. And like, everyone's like, well, I don't write this. I don't write this. I'm like, well, I didn't think and they got to me. I'm like, I didn't think I wrote this, but now that I think about it, yeah, like I got a whole bunch of this.
Yeah.
And, once you kind of embrace that, and again, you're just trying to, if your focus is on the audience and making sure they're having a good time, because it is a show, they call it,
Yeah.
it's the show. And, so many authors they're really thinking about the question. They're
Yeah.
really, really thinking about answering the question correctly. They want to get it right, which is not wrong. But they're focused on that. They're focused on talking about how what was asked applied to their book. They're talking about um, all that kind of stuff. And if you just focus on my goal is to make the audience laugh, but if you focus on just making sure it's a good time for the audience, I think you come out further ahead.
Well, and I think one of the other things to keep in mind is another part of the audience is the showrunners themselves, right? The company running the show. And if you're funny, if you're kind, if you are easy to work with, if you just make people laugh, they are going to want you back because that's who they want on their platform.
Exactly. This is the second year I found myself on that dystopia panel. Actually, because last year there was a person that was very argumentative with the moderator, and the moderator was very opinionated, and I thought very, very funny. I
Uh,
mean, she's very funny. Apparently, this this panel has a history of that, and that was my first year on it was the second year for it. She had gotten kind of combative with one of the panelists the first year. So the second year, which was the first year I was on it, she brought fish to throw at people that disagreed with her,
like actual fish.
like stuffed fish.
Okay, thank God.
And yeah, it was stuffed
It's not like a
fish.
cooler
And
of like
she's
fish.
like, I won't argue with you. I'll just throw these fish at you. That was it.
That's great.
And it was funny. It was hilarious. But this one person on the panel was just apparently, um, even after the panel, he was like talking to the show, the coordinators going like, why is she, and the audience was laughing. We were all loving. It was hilarious. I was in tears laughing at a lot of what was going on in that panel. So I was back this year, and several of the people on the panel were. He wasn't.
Yeah.
And this year they gave her Nerf guns. So instead of fish, they
They've armed
delivered a
her.
package. They delivered a package and I was trying to sit on the end so I wouldn't get hit by a fish. And I ended up sitting right next. She came and sat right next to me, so I was right next to the moderator.
No.
And they brought her a package that was like labeled Acme, and she opens it up, and it's 2 loaded Nerf guns. Like, oh my gosh, it's just getting worse and worse. But it was the best panel, and not one of us thought we should be there. But it was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice.
but that's the point. That is, you go in thinking I'm going to look smart. I'm going to sell my books. I'm like, no, just make sure it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a place, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a place you're doing a pitch. You're showing them who you are personality wise, and it'll resonate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.